What's up, guys? It's Jordan Sommers here in Somms Vintage. This is my store, and I just did an interview with Harlem Taylor magazine. They're amazing. They did really good stuff, and I really appreciate them, and this was awesome.
You know what? I got to do this the same way I do all the interviews. That's funny. All right, so another day, Harlem Taylor magazine. And today this entire situation is different. The location is different. The city is different. And we're here with a special guest, man. I never introduce people, bro. I always let them introduce themselves. Tell them who you are.
Yeah, my name is Jordan Sommers. I'm here in DeKalb, Illinois. I don't think you brought up the destination of where we're at yet, but we're about 50 minutes out from Chicago. We're right off of Northern Illinois University.
Where we at, man? What are we doing here? Where's this specific building that we are at?
Yeah, so this is, we're actually in my store right now. It's called Somms Vintage because my last name is Sommers and I like to sell vintage clothing. But, you know, some people may not really think it's vintage because they probably wore a lot of this stuff in high school, but you know, one of my biggest slogans is what was once old is now new again. So everything's kind of coming back, and I got a store for that. So
let's just start there, because I have a million questions for you, and I can't wait till people get to see like some of the footage we recorded before so they can check the store out. It's actually very impressive, man. Where did the idea come from for you to start a store in general?
Yeah, so the actual, me physically wanting to open a store came from me just selling clothes out of my garage. That's when I knew that I could be really successful with having an in-person store because there's not even a location within a 45-minute radius of us that's a specialty store for vintage clothing. So that's exactly what I brought to this university here at NIU. That's kind of why I wanted a physical store. But if you wanted me to talk a little bit about the journey leading up to it, I could also talk about that a little bit.
Well, of course, man, because we want people to know not only who you are, but what it took to get in the position that you're in now. Because tell people how old you are.
I'm only 20 years old.
And you're a business owner.
Yeah, I own my own business.
You see what I'm saying? So, Of course, we want the journey. So before we go to the journey, why was it vintage clothing that you got into versus current fashion?
Yeah, so the big reason why I chose vintage clothing was because I think there's so many different aesthetics within vintage clothing. So I think when people think of vintage clothing, they think of their grandpa sweaters and, you know, they think of their, really old knits and things like that, but that's actually not at all totally the case. We do have those in our store. I think there's plenty of super cool outfits to put together with that, but we have a ton of streetwear. We have a ton of, vintage Chicago Bulls stuff because we're right outside of Chicago, and we even have some vintage Detroit pieces in here and things like that. So I think that there's just so many different aesthetics you could chase within vintage clothing that it kind of, is just a wide variety of selection, and that's a really big reason of why I chose vintage clothing. And another big reason I should probably say on camera is my biggest reason is because it's a great way to express yourself. I think I have an old soul. I'm very, I love hard, very loyal. I believe in, settling down, being a man of your word and working hard and things like that. So, some people now would consider that very old school and things like that. I love the, the older aesthetic too. I think they don't make things like they used to now. I kind of have an old soul, and it's a way to express myself. And I know that there's plenty of people that feel that way too.
So where does your connection for fashion in general come from? Where did that start? Because in order to have a store doing what you're doing and not only paying homage to the past, but making sure that it stays current, making sure that that's what's now, where did this all start from you for fashion?
Yeah, so I've always really been into fashion because one of my the things that one of the things I like to say the most is you want what you can't have. So me growing up, I felt like I couldn't wear, the really nice things. My dad always threw me in like Walmart clothes. I was wearing, the And1 shoes from Walmart, things like that. It'd be 6 months at a time. I would, just be wearing that stuff growing up. And I always like really wanted, the nicest, coolest things. And so, I started asking for like Nike, shoes and Nike socks and stuff when I was a kid, just because that's what everyone was wearing at the time. And, like one Christmas, I remember it came around and I got a pair of Nike Elite socks, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, man, this is so sick. And obviously I was a former athlete, so I loved sportswear and things like that. So I was always into it. And then in high school, I started making my own money. I worked my own part-time job. I was a bagger at Schnucks, and, I was working my tail off, 39 and a half hours a week. I wasn't technically full-time. So, I was working my tail off, and I would go take my paycheck, and I would literally just go online, like eBay and things like that, and I would just buy, like, whatever I felt like was cool at the time for me. So I've always dressed, dressed to impress, I guess. I've always really felt like it was a good way that I could be different from other people and maybe stand out a little bit was through my fashion. So, yeah.
So I want to interject here, but you spoke about shopping on eBay as a kid. Like that's where it kind of first started. Now you run an eBay store upstairs.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, bro. How do you like talk about it, man?
Yeah. So the eBay store upstairs.